wife had to come home from work like sideways and jump in the car. And things are crazy for her work on the bus, and then things are crazy for my work because one of our team members quit.
Sorry.
Basically weren't working for like the last month, so they just dumped it.
All right, you are streaming, sir. Be sure to use your mics.
All right. It is 6:32. We'll go ahead and call this community development meeting to order, March 11th, 2025. Looks like we've got 3 members here, so we have a quorum. So we'll go ahead and move on to public comments. Do we have anybody who would like to speak from the public on anything that is not on the agenda?
Anybody here?
All right.
I think that's a pretty long
Yep.
career for my brother.
Seeing none, we will move on to the minutes of January 14th, 2025 for approval.
Motion to approve.
I second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approved. And then discussion on action designating the increased video gaming fees towards economic development incentives.
So this is something that has been discussed in the past, and staff went through and with our city attorney drafted an ordinance that what you could do is designate that. So early last year, we raised the
Let the record reflect that Lori Lancaster has joined the meeting. Sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So the gaming fees used to be $25, or permits used to be $25, and this committee, and then eventually to the council, raised them from $25 to the $250.
This is per machine.
Per machine,
Okay.
correct. And this is an annual fee. So what this ordinance does is essentially designating that extra $225 to go towards economic development.
Okay.
To fund economic development with the other $25 remaining in general funds. Now, this is an option that this committee can do. Keep in mind that as far as designating funds, all that is already taking place during the budgeting process. So you could, instead of doing an ordinance that already pushes everything over, you can do this at the budget process. Because you still have to approve an ordinance that finalizes the budget, and that's the same thing as passing an ordinance, in spirit, the same as this.
So if we were to pass an ordinance saying this money is allocated for community development, would that then lock that money into only being used for?
The ordinance is either repealed or a new ordinance is amended.
So we wouldn't, if it was left in the general fund, we could have the freedom to allocate it pretty much wherever we would like, obviously.
And use a rule of thumb that the other thing to make the accounting easier, instead of saying the 225, just make the full 250.
Mhm.
And then the other part to it is it also allows us the ability that should revenues not come in like expected, you can still leave it, at least for that next budget year, in the general fund.
So you're basically codifying it year to year?
Yeah.
By going
Yeah.
through the budget.
Through the
Yeah.
budget process.
But kind of like we have with the motor fuel tax, we can only use that for
Once you pass an ordinance.
certain, yeah, correct. But like, that's under an ordinance, so just, if we pass this ordinance, that money would be locked into that account and restricted for
Create a
usage.
you restrict where the money can go.
Yeah.
So the question is, do you want to do that in perpetuity until the ordinance is either repealed or revised? Or do you want to do it on an annual basis? The choice is your guys, but our recommendation is if you did decide to do an ordinance, to allocate the increase of this funding, because the previous $25 was already used in the general fund and is used to finance at the budget process. The increase in the fee is new revenue.
Yeah.
And so staffing is asking, hey, can we kind of at least consider earmarking this for community development? So
Rather than earmarking but not locking it in. I understand.
So we're
I see,
offering
yeah.
you a choice on how you want to proceed.
And when
mean-
would this be effective?
Sorry, be effective for budget year 26-27.
If we were to pass this right now.
If you're past this, because you've already kind of at least drafted a budget that includes this funding and has already been allocated in that funding and
And-
that budgeting process
And these fees are collected,
annually.
yeah, but when annually?
April timeframe?
Okay, so yeah, so basically we'd be if we were to do it, we'd line it up right with the budget. When they're allocated, that money would be then, we wouldn't have to, what I'm saying is we wouldn't have, like, if we did it in June, it wouldn't take effect till the following year because
correct.
we'd have to wait till the next collection.
So basically, it's a transfer out.
Yeah.
When we did the budget workshop, we already allocated the 26, which hasn't been finalized yet, so it can be dropped down to the 24,075. But when we do the transfer outs, we do those quarterly.
Yeah.
Because obviously, this money's not coming into April, but other revenue's coming in, and it's all, commingled into one fund. So each quarter we transfer a quarter of that revenue.
Yeah.
Into economic development, and then they could use it. Right, because that portion's going in. Instead of having to wait till the end of the fiscal year and having to wait to use those funds, they can use it as it gets transferred in. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand.
Basically, it provides them cash flow all year.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah,
My thought process behind with this was to actually have this fund go into the revolving loan fund to grow it, such that, let me finish, such that you reached a certain point where, okay, we don't need to grow that fund anymore. Let's say we do this for 10 years, and then after that point, so I don't know if you can have an ordinance that expires.
You can't create a sunset clause.
Because, really, honestly, what do we have in that fund? $200,000?
Revolving loan, 185.
So, and I think that's way too low. I think that you need to
Well-
show,
I should say, that's 185 that we currently have, or the total fund?
That's 185, in the bank account,
No,
185.
I mean, including what's loaned
Including all
out.
loans out.
No, that doesn't include loans out. There's 2 loans out right now. One of them is about
To come due in October, the other one's a new loan downtown, that's a 3-year for
That's,
Sisano?
yeah, it's like 100,000 there.
Okay, so, and he just started that, so there's
so it's
probably
we
another,
have $300,000 in that account?
there's probably another 90,000 in there.
You're closer to about
If he were to
4.
pay off his loan today.
all parking, let's say 4.
It's
About
about
400,000.
300,000, yeah,
So there's currently about 185 that's available.
Available?
right.
But the rest is already loaned out, but as that gets paid back,
Right.
that available funding will
Right.
increase so the total amount that's in the entire use, which would include the funds that are out, probably 400K.
Okay.
And the city is exploring, there is typically an annual grant process from the state, DCEO, that we could apply for. In fact, the city of Rochelle has done this many times, that gets funding that can seed into that revolving loan fund. In fact, they've built theirs up to, I think, over $6 million
Yeah.
through this. So
I was
we want to
thinking,
pursue that.
I was thinking $1 million would be a good amount to have in that fund. And again, and I'm talking about showing local businesses that we're there to support them. Here's a program that they can use, whether it be, I don't know, Bob's wants to put in a door to get in and, a glass door to get in and out onto the patio, or whatever the project may be. But, it's for local businesses.
Well, I think to that point, the whole idea of expanding the scope of the program
Yeah, right.
and
we've done that.
expanding the locations that are eligible for the program. I mean, these are all steps, so I certainly support adding more revenue to this, because the whole point of having that revolving loan fund is to be able to supply businesses with the opportunity to gain
Right.
capital at a low interest rate. So
I think if we did this for 5 years with a sunset of 5 years, then whoever's on council 5 years from now can evaluate whether or not they want to continue it. That's my opinion.
So, I didn't want to cut you off.
That's all right. Look, we're good.
So the other thing to consider, first off, you're talking a grand total of about $27,000 in this particular one, which is not, it's more of an accounting hassle than it is that it will show that much impact. Your earlier statement was you'd rather see it go right into the revolving loan fund. And the reason why staff has put it this way in the ordinance and suggesting this as well is once you designate it right into if you go this route, if you
Yeah.
designate it right into the revolving loan fund, it can't come back out. It's no different than an MFT dollar.
Yeah.
It is clearly marked, that's it. So if we don't have any loans going out that year, it's there.
Right.
If we need it for something else because, revenues are down, it cannot come back out. So that's the reason why that staff is suggesting if you do anything here, not to put it right into the revolving loan fund. Now, through the budgeting process, and various things, what you could do is as you get closer to the end of the budget year, it could be a budget amendment that what you do is, let's say you've got $400,000 in ready cash in the Economic Development Fund. But it doesn't look like we have any major projects coming up. What you could do is at least designate a portion of that to go right into the revolving loan fund. That's something that's a tool in the toolkit that you could do instead of designate it right into the revolving loan fund. But that's
How did we originally seed the revolving loan fund?
if it's like any other state, it was probably through like a CDBG or a DCEO grant.
What I think actually was donations from the members of the HEDC.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
If I remember rightly, that's what it
That
was.
a lot of that funding was brought in under that, the members of that organization. And then, again, that money, when the HEDC was dissolved, as part of those bylaws, that funding then comes to the city. So that's, I don't know exactly how it was seeded, but I believe that is the case, because I didn't live in the community then, so.
And then the other thing to consider while between this and item number 6 on the agenda is that, as the mayor indicated, there is a DCEO revolving loan fund type grant that's out there. You can range from anywhere, or you can apply from anywhere for $1 million to $3 million. At least for this first year, we'd like to apply for at least $1 million. And in next week's admin committee, we're talking about the grant writer contract, which will eventually go on to the council meeting, which we have a high probability of getting that grant, or a lot better than if we just did it on our own. So if the worry is about whether or not to be able to at least have $1 million minimum in the revolving loan fund, we have a potential other. So that said, another funding way of doing that. That said, if this committee is willing to do it between items 5 and 6, I'd actually ask that these be at least tabled until around July, August, to see how that grant goes.
So one of the things we have to decide tonight is what we're doing with the item 5. Because at the budget workshop, this body actually budgeted to transfer $26,000 out of the gaming licensing and into economic development. That was the actual decision that was made.
Yeah.
Now, that hasn't been approved. It won't be approved until Wednesday at admin. But I need to be able to have that information to take, because as of right now, if I go to admin, I'm going with what they did at the budget workshop. So if that's going to change, we need to make that change tonight as far as what we're doing with the budget
Can we
this
do
year.
it for, just not make a change and just do it for this year, and then?
Well, we can codify, you can codify it however you want. What I need tonight is, are we going to transfer out the full 26,000? Are we only going to transfer out 24,075? And are we going to transfer it to economic development, or are we going to transfer it to revolving loan?
I think, so, I'm with you, Jay. I would like to see that fund seeded with more money. I think, I was actually thinking $1 million is probably like a good starting
Yeah.
point. What is there a limit on how much a business can borrow?
Right now, 50,000.
That's our, is that like a hard cap, or is that just kind of like what the policy is?
It's policy at the
Okay,
moment.
but it's not-
And really, that is because we want to ensure that we have funding to give to more than one business, right?
Yeah, I just want to make sure it wasn't like part of an ordinance, or that was like codified, like that's the cap.
Have made an exception for, in the case of design coach, but that's because they're doing 2 separate addresses.
Yeah.
And so we were able then
Okay,
to
So-
say, okay, for this address, you can have a loan, and for this one, a different one. Because they're doing both their design shop and also a retail facility. So that's why that one appears like it's more, but the policy cap is 50K.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that, because obviously if it's a policy, it's something we can change at any time.
Absolutely,
With, and,
absolutely.
that we have we have the freedom to do that, and I'm glad we did it that way. The reason I'm asking that is because, more to think about what the fund, balance we'd want it to be, because obviously, let's say we kept the cap at 50,000, and this is more just for anybody listening to what we're discussing. When we have, obviously, if we have 100,000 in there, that's only two businesses that can capitalize on it. We have $1 million in there, then that number could be up to 75, 100,000, because obviously 50,000, 10 years from now isn't going to be anywhere near the same value. But it also would allow many businesses to take advantage of this at the same time, because we can all pretty much agree, I would think, that the time that they're going to capitalize on this is when interest rates are high or the economy is bad. Because they're going to take advantage of a loan to rehab the business while they're in a slump, as opposed to trying to do it when it's their busiest time, and, and when they can get a traditional loan for less or whatever. So I really love this program. Ever since we started talking about it, I've agreed with Jay, we really need to grow this as not only as much as possible, but as quickly as possible, so that we've got this as a resource to help our small businesses, because people really want small businesses versus chains for the most part. My thinking is that, unfortunately, both of us are not going to be on this board much longer. So it's going to be after us, so we kind of have to put our faith in the future group that they're going to hopefully stick with the plan that we'd like. But I'm okay with not codifying it into a hard ordinance for the time being, simply because if this grant is something that we can do, I would love to see, I really want to see the source of this money be used for this, especially like cannabis, gaming, alcohol, whatever. I'd love to see those types of things fund. If they're community vices, I'd love to see those vices fund things that are more beneficial to the community. So I'd love to see this apply there, but I can see that it would make we've already made a decision in budgeting, and I see that leaving it open doesn't lock us in or create an issue that would have to be undone. So I'm okay with doing it the way that it's recommended for now. And should the grants obviously not proceed, then my ask would be that to whatever future administration, staff, whatever, that they try to revisit this and try to steer that type of money into this program.
Well,
That's
and like
what
Lou mentioned earlier, if it gets to the point near the end of the fiscal year that the Economic Development Fund is building up, because remember, we have some other revenue streams coming in there. We're going to transfer some TIF money and some other incentive things. Like he said, we can do a budget amendment and transfer some out to the revolving loan and start building that up when we see where we're at.
Right.
Or we could just, decide however you want to decide to do it, we just need to know where we're going to put it by next week.
And if we do a budget amendment at that time, and we transfer it just to make sure that if we don't have it codified, but at the end of the budget cycle, this body chooses to do a budget amendment and transfer that money, it can still be transferred back out, should an emergency come up. It wouldn't be a locked into a one-way transfer into that account, because it's not codified.
So,
It would be for this budget year, this upcoming budget year.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, anything that happened, if you needed that revenue stream for something else, you can undo the transfer out through an amendment, but
That's what I'm getting at.
So-
It wouldn't-
the security so let's go back to the budget workshop. So 26,000, we want to put this in economic development. The security of making sure that gets done comes through the budget adoption, right? At the end of the budget cycle, if this body decides that they want to continue with that and they want to codify it at that time or move it somewhere else or however they want to do it, that's another decision for the next upcoming budget.
Yep.
And you can certainly, Lou presented, you can codify it now with a sunset. The big question is, where are you sending it? Are you sending it to economic development or are you sending it to revolving loan?
right, and that's the thing to keep in mind. You're talking about two different funds here. The Economic Development Department, which at that point can come out with different incentives that aren't necessarily tied to certain restrictions, or you can send it right to revolving loan fund. But keep in mind, once you send it to the revolving loan fund, in either case, be it through these ordinances or in a transfer, that's it. It goes right into revolving loan fund and whatever restrictions are applied there.
Okay, so basically, anything we put in that revolving loan fund at any point cannot be pulled out
Correct.
unless it's being issued as a loan.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, is it?
You have to approach the podium and then
You gotta
state
make
your
it
name and
official.
address.
Why does it just seem like it's?
Wait. For the record, because of OMA, Open Meetings Act, we need you to state your name and address before you ask a question.
Okay.
You gotta be on microphone too, so.
I just had a question. Why is it just one side of the room? Why don't you guys have
Ma'am, you still
input?
need to state your name and address first.
It's Lisa Haig.
And where do you live?
I live in Harvard, or Caprins, but I've lived in Harvard my whole life. But I'm just wondering, how come you guys don't, why is it just one side? It seems there's nobody else here, but why don't you guys get a chance to get input?
Because they're not giving us a chance.
That's what I'm saying.
Listening to what they were saying because
Yeah.
I wanted to see what their viewpoint was.
'Cause what time is it?
And what other issues were being raised, so.
Because I've been here for since 6:30, and I haven't heard nothing at all from this side. It's all city, right? Not just one.
That's right.
So Mayor, I did have a question. So the money that we have right now in the economic development, for the loans for the small businesses, where did we get that? Where did that come from?
So the money, prior to bringing this economic development in-house, we used to partner with an organization called the Economic Development Corporation. The Economic Development Corporation was a partnership, a private-public partnership with the city and the membership of that organization, which was a not-for-profit, essentially. There was a board of directors that were part of that, and most of the banks sat on that board, as well as other businesses that paid a certain amount of dues to be able to obtain a board seat. The city's dues, because the city was the largest contributor to the HEDC, was like $25,000 a year. So almost what you're looking at here, that is new revenue that has been created from the increased fees for gaming. So anyways, over the years, that organization did a lot of the functions that Donovan now does here. So we used to, with the HEDC, you had an executive director. His name, you've met him, is Charlie Eldridge. And so Charlie would do a lot of the functions of what Donovan does, but he had really a very different focus than what I think we needed from the community. And at the time, the HEDC was really struggling with membership, was really struggling to find a president, because the president had to step down because his business required more of his time than he was able to give to serving on the HEDC. So eventually, the board decided, okay, then let's dissolve the organization. And as part of those bylaws, that group had a fund that they utilized for this revolving loan fund. So it was kind of worked through the HEDC and the city. Anyways, when that was dissolved, all that funding came to the city, and that is what seeded our economic development department. And then there's the separate fund, which is the revolving loan fund. So hopefully that answers your question.
So actually, economic development fund is seeded by that. The revolving loan fund is separate, that was what we just gave to downtown businesses.
Yes, I should clarify. So, yes, there are two separate funds, yes. So the revolving loan fund was created when the HEDC was partnered with the city.
Yes.
And then when the HEDC dissolved, that funding that the HEDC had in their accounts went in and seeded our economic development department, if you will. So you have two separate funds, the revolving loan fund, which for the most part never got any additional money into it, because Back then, the money that was there was loaned out, it was paid back at zero interest. And so the city council decided, let's make those fees a little bit higher, so all the interest that it generates goes back into the fund to help grow the fund. And of course, the city has been looking for additional revenue streams and grants to try and increase that fund, because the more that's in that fund, the more that's available for our
For the
businesses to use.
And the way we're growing, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
So
okay.
is there a way to split half of what we're getting back into the thing, so that way we can have some money there in case something happens, though we hope it doesn't happen? Anything bad that we would need to have a lot of fundage for, and then put the other half into the revolving loan fund right away? So that way, with the sunset clause, so that way we can actually have funding going in there
It's
without.
at your discretion what you want to do. I think at the moment, the admin committee had suggested for this year, because this is the first year we'll be collecting it, that the 26,000 would go into the economic development department. Now, the economic development department, I mean, at some point, the idea there was to try and create other incentives outside of the revolving loan fund, because not everybody will want to participate in the loan fund, but there may be opportunity to do other incentives that are not tied to that loan. That's up to your discretion, really. That's why it's on the agenda. How do you guys want to do it? I will say staff will always be cautious in trying to say it's better to have flexibility, right? So that you can move money if you need to, versus codifying it that it only goes in this fund, because once it goes in that fund, if you do have an emergency, there is no way to pull it out. Whereas if you don't have an emergency and still have that money, you could make a budget amendment to send it to the fund at a later date and still accomplish what you wanted to do, but you give yourself flexibility if you need to reallocate money. Hopefully that's kind of in a nutshell.
Jay and Dan, I was just kidding. You guys are very knowledgeable, and we're learning from you.
No, sorry.
So, No, yeah,
Yeah,
I know,
please,
I know.
jump in.
I know, you guys are very knowledgeable, and, we sit here and learn,
No, you're fine.
and starting to.
Well, you don't get into an alderman position knowing exactly what you need to do and all the information you need to learn.
Right,
It
it's a lot.
takes time,
Yeah,
and
there's a
so
lot.
we certainly understand that.
I value Jay's viewpoint, especially as a small business
No, yeah,
owner,
you're-
because that way we don't know certain aspects that you might be privy to, especially with other business owners talking to you, so I don't know all the needs there.
Well, and from my perspective, to kind of go with what you're saying, Rosa, is, Jay's been on this council longer than me. Not much longer,
Not much longer.
little
2 years.
a little bit, enough. We both are going to be seeing the end of our tenure soon. You guys are staying on this board, and from my perspective, we've all agreed from different angles what the goal could be, or what it should be, what we'd like to see happen. So since you guys are on the council, obviously there's going to be some new people taking our places. You will be the senior members at that point. So
Scary.
we would
More responsibility coming your way soon.
But we would appreciate, I appreciate your perspective and then helping maintain that same vision and direction to the new members, so that when they come in and they are green and don't really they're getting their feet wet and figuring out how this body has gone, you guys can help steer that in that direction and continue with the same values that we've built. This particular issue has been something that Jay and I have repeatedly brought up and talked about, because it's important to both of us since we learned that this was a thing. And so, again, I would say that I would say officially I would side with the staff's recommendation here to avoid, because like I said, if it's in the community development fund, we can move it around within general funds how we need to for emergencies, for applying to other things. I really want to see as much money go into this program as we can, but I understand that it's a one-way street into that account. So anything we put in, it's there. So I would be okay
Yeah.
keep
Yeah, that's
taking a
fine.
leap of faith and hoping that this continues to be a value point.
Come back in July and bug them.
Yeah,
Deb,
we can
will we know like in mid-April, will you be able to say, Jay, we have our aldermen, alderwomen, we have X amount of money in the community development fund that you can move some over to this revolving loan fund if you wanted to by the,
Next year?
no, this year.
No, there won't be any this year.
Okay. Just curious. The budget amendment before the end of the year, like you said, before the end of the year is April, right? April 30th,
Next fiscal year.
Okay.
So this year, we already set the budget
right?
for economic development. Revolving loan isn't part of the budget, but economic development is. So this year, we haven't approved it, but at the budget workshop, we decided we would take the 26,000, transfer it to economic development. That is revenue that fund is going to be using for the upcoming fiscal year 25-26.
Right.
Should they also get other funding sources, or these incentives come in and they don't spend as much, and there's money left over at the end of next fiscal year, so April of '26, at that point, we could do the transfer and the budget amendment. You could also just budget for 26-27 and move the money at that time. There's several different options for moving the money. The Economic Development Fund is pretty much Lou and Donovan's fund. They, know what's going on with that one, so they would have to analyze that themselves and see where they're at and what they've got going on at that time. But no, that's not this fiscal year. This is for the end of the following fiscal year.
So next April.
Correct.
Okay.
And then at that time too, you'll
What
know
about the,
if you
but
have
hold on, what
the,
about the end of this April? Wouldn't you know if there's excess funds in the community development fund that you could move?
there isn't any because we've
Okay.
already budgeted to put money in there.
Okay.
We're transferring money from the general fund, we're transferring money from TIF into economic development, so they can do what they've got upcoming. They're also using some of their cash flow, or their fund balance right now. They do have cash in their account, and they're applying some of that to the expenses that they think they're gonna have as well. So as of right now, that fund isn't not much bigger than the revolving loan fund.
Okay.
But if that grant comes through, your revolving loan fund could be huge,
Yeah.
right? And then we won't even have to worry about having this discussion, so.
Yeah, because if that happens, at that point, this funding would be better suited to go somewhere else.
When are you applying for the fund?
Well, as soon as at the admin committee, we're going to, sorry, let me back up. You caught me off guard. So the contract is going in front of the admin committee next week. They have already let us know that as soon as there's a hint that the contract's going to be approved, that in April, they'll go ahead and start the process. Now, the grant itself, I think we have until mid-May to apply, so they'll have plenty of time to do it. The AACS, which is the grant writers, they feel very confident that they can get it turned around within 10 to 14 days. So,
Well worth the money.
When will it go into the?
so we wouldn't receive the money until, at the earliest, into the next budget year. And since it would be a revolving loan fund, it would be outside of the normal budget process. So then we could literally get the money on, say, a Tuesday and start loaning the money out first thing Wednesday morning. Because again, that revolving loan fund is outside. It's restricted, and the plus side about it being restricted is that also puts it outside of the normal budget process that you can use it right away for loans.
And just that you had said that this was a state.
Yeah, it
This
is
is a
fully
state
funded.
grant.
There's a portion of it coming from the feds, but that portion has already been guaranteed. The state already has the money in their pocket.
Okay, it's fully funded
It's-
already.
yes,
That's
fully
why
funded.
just
Yes.
wanted to make sure that this wasn't something that might
We just
not
want to
be
get a
there.
piece of it.
Yeah, well,
So if the way I'm was looking at operating, since the admin committee is so close to the regular council meeting, that if they approve or they recommend it to the council, I'm more inclined to go ahead and tell them, hey, whatever data you need, let's start collecting it so that come April 1st, or sorry, March 26th, we're already starting to hit the floor running.
I'm okay with tabling these as recommended.
6 and
for
7,
now.
or 5 and 6.
Yeah, until,
Do we need to make a motion for that?
Yeah, is that a motion, Alderman?
do we need a motion to
Yes.
table the
You
issue?
would to table it, yes.
Okay.
Well, so I'll make that motion table number 5 until the committee meeting in July.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Lorena.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. We'll table number 5 until July.
Okay, so just to be clear, I'm transferring 26,000 from general fund to economic development for the upcoming budget year, though.
Yes, because that's what the admin committee had created, and this committee is not making any changes.
Okay,
Yep.
beautiful. Thank you.
Assuming that the budget passes when it's supposed to.
Right. So we would need to do the same thing for number 6. Lori or Rosa, did you want to make that motion?
Sure. I make a motion to approve the discussion and action allocating the revenue from the municipal cannabis retailers occupation.
No, you want to
That
table
one?
it, probably.
Oh, we want to table it?
Yeah,
Okay.
table
to
it with.
July.
Okay, got it. I make a motion to table agenda number 6 to July.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 6 is also tabled till July.
And this is assuming, well, that we have a cannabis distributor at that point. Hopefully we do. Well, I don't know if it'll be.
They might not be operating, but we'll.
No,
know if
probably
they're-
not
if
till
they're
the
moving
fall. I
forward.
think, yeah.
Well, we can, even if they're not there, we can always just create the ordinance and then have the ordinance for when someone's there.
Yeah, the one thing you won't be certain of is your actual dollar amounts. If they're up and running, what was it, October they were predicting?
Correct.
We wouldn't even get the first revenue payment till January of '26. And that would obviously come in increments, so,
Yeah, it might not be.
you know, and if their sales aren't 4 million a year, then that's gonna change your
Yeah.
dollar amounts, but you get the idea from,
But the percentages would stay.
the percentages would stay, yes.
So we revisit in July, but I mean, really, before this body can really do any kind of actual decisions on it, would probably be better to wait till the actual money comes in and we see what it is, and then we can decide what we're gonna do with it. That's what I would do. It's kind of hard to allocate, to designate where funds are gonna go if you have no idea what that amount's gonna be, and then you're stuck.
Talk about allocating the funds that are going to come from the food trucks that could park in that empty lot right next to the,
Double dipping, I like it.
Anyway.
All right, so we'll move on to number 7, discussion or action on building permit fees for the Foxtail Properties Developer Agreement.
So, one of the things that's been mentioned before when we've done these development agreements, and as you may recall, over the last 2 years, we've been slowly but surely asking for a guarantee for more homes to be built in order to get a discount. At the same time, if you recall, 2 years ago, I think we were down to like $4,000, $4,400 for a permit. And depending on how many homes, we've been raising that slowly. If you were to do a single-family home right now, the total permit fees would be about $9,900. So what we're asking is Foxtail came back and said, hey, we've already crushed all the homes out of the last agreement. We'd like to do another one. They were originally asking for 4 homes over a year. I've asked for 10 over 2 years. They were asking for 4 homes over 2 years, and I've asked them for 10 homes over 2 years in order to get a discount. They were originally being charged $6,600 a permit. They do know that we're gradually raising it up as we go along this process. We're bumping it up to $7,000 at least. And with this agreement, keep in mind that if they don't build all 10 homes within the 2-year time frame, they would actually owe us back for wherever homes that were already built and pay the difference of between $7,000, so $2,900 to get it back up to what would the regular full payment would have been. So it's really on them to keep their profit margin to keep building these homes. Now, there in the draft that was in here, I did want to point out in the bottom, the last paragraph, over on the right-hand side, it says 6,600 times 3. In the actual one, should this committee approve it, it should actually say 7,000 times 3. Okay, so it
Yeah,
reads
basically,
properly.
it was a recopy of the previous, I
Right.
think, there was some boilerplate that needed to be updated.
Right.
So, but yes, the fee would be increased to 7,000. As, like I say, we're slowly increasing fees to what they should be. So the question is, does this committee agree with this? And if so, could you make a recommendation to council to approve it?
Just to clarify, what impact fees are we removing from here? Is it
So,
fire department? I'm trying to understand who we're impacting.
so right now, this is in that same area that the council, the committee and the council is trying to encourage more development. So the impact fees are not included in any of this. And we've talked it over internally that as we get closer to the 9,000 mark, and I've asked Donovan to do a full tally of all the available parcels in those areas, that when we get a little closer, the theory is once we get around maybe 30% is already filled in, that we start now including, like the 7,000 would include another $1,800 or $1,600 for like the school impact fees. So we slowly start adding it back in.
We have impact fees as well that they're not included, correct?
Yeah, we have the Parks Department gets $400, which we've waived out of this, and then you're gonna have to correct me or don't quote me fully on this, but I believe the Fire Protection Department gets like $60 or $80 out of it, and then the school is the one that actually gets the biggest chunk, which is $1,600. And I can send that around tomorrow. Those impact fees.
Well, because a couple years back, we were talking about going through everybody's amount on the impact fees and reassessing how it was broken down. But we never really had anyone that was affected willing to meet with us and discuss, so we kind of dropped the issue. In this particular case, and everybody's welcome to discuss, but I would say that considering the economic situation that we are experiencing, I'm more than okay with this, because there is a high probability that the cost of building a home is going to be negatively impacted for developers in the very near future, if not already. So keeping these incentives alive is going to play in our favor, as opposed to making ourselves more difficult to be competitive should the market shift and make it less enticing for builders to be able to build it at volume. So that I'm okay with this for that reason. Anticipating that, we've been raising it, but at the same time, we want to make sure that should lumber, steel, and everything else go up because of the on and off again tariffs, that who knows what's going on, this is just one more thing that could end up causing pain to our developers and cause them to have to step away. Yeah.
And I'm so used to looking to the left because of all the other committees. I apologize. I'm trying to work both sides here. So the one thing I did want to note, and this is especially for our viewers and listeners out there, yeah, it sounds like we're not doing, like giving the school $1,600 or the fire department, fire protection, the $60 or whatever it ends up being. But keep in mind that they get a larger chunk when a home becomes taxable. So as these homes, 3 years ago and earlier, we were only averaging about one home a year. We've had 17 one year. We're up to around 60 this last year, and we're hoping to get between 50 and 60 again this year. So this reduction is actually been helping. In the first round of homes, the 17 homes should start showing up on the tax rolls for all entities, I believe, in the 26-27 budget year. So even though 17 homes may not have a whole lot of kids involved or so on, or living in the home, but by the time that the tax was normally hit, you'll more than make up for that lack of a $1,600 one-time fee. Because keep in mind too, that impact fee is a one-time fee. So once that permit is issued, they only get, if it's like the school in that case, they only get $1,600. And to correct, to add a little more information to that, Dan, we actually moved our meeting like 3 times.
At least.
Nobody showed up.
Oh, yeah. We moved the meeting and we made several attempts to reach out to communicate.
And there were specific letters and emails that went out.
I think Jay even did on his own time, went out and tried to get something going. I still think that that's something that this council should revisit in the future. Should there, and in my opinion, I would, if I was going to be staying on this board, I would recommend that we do it with or without partnership at that point, because it's something that hasn't been revisited, as it was pointed out to us back then for what, decades, close to it. So, I mean, I agree. I mean, I've always thought that these fees were nitpicking these fees by $1,000 either way, to me, has always been penny smart and dollar stupid. Because once you build a home, that home is there for 50 or 100 years with property taxes and whatever, whether this is, you know, a little bit just a pocket change in comparison to that. Plus, every time we build and sell homes across this town, that ups the overall assessed values of the properties, typically. Not always, but usually the trend is the more houses that are built, the more they sell, the assessed values go up, that increases property taxes again. So it's, you know, builds upon builds.
So is there a way to be able, I'm just assuming that, okay. So is there a way to be able to put something on the books, like maybe in July or August, that we're going to revisit this and just send out the notes so that way, you know, they know whether or not they show up, we're going to be doing this and we've already given them enough time in advance to do this? You know,
Well, so this
to
is
look
just,
into the,
this is just an agreement for Foxtail that says like they're okay with the
I know that
7,000,
part, but
yes.
I mean with the impact fees, because
Yeah.
I know last year there was a big commotion because of the fact that it was seen as we were penalizing the school district from not taking those things into account. But at least this way, if we say right now, you know, we can do this, look forward to this at this time.
Yeah, my recommendation would be to the committee going forward, if they decide to do this, they give it like a 3-month window and communicate with the different entities that would be affected, that we are going to have this discussion, you know, formal letter, you know, to whoever is the head of that organization, letting them know we're going to have this discussion on this date, and invite them. If they do not come, that's their choice. But I would do it. I would send them at least 2 or 3 notifications, letting them know we're going to do it.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I'd also recommend you wait until after there's a new head to that.
New superintendent.
New superintendent, because obviously they have to hire somebody, and it'd be a good opportunity to kind of create some additional bridge work to the organization, and they're, you know, kind of going into it eyes wide open, what they can expect in the future.
Because originally, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the school's representation, but when this was originally brought up to discuss, and it was just brought up by staff because it hadn't been addressed in a long time, and it was worth reviewing. Not necessarily making even changes, but just reviewing. And the impression that we got was that those entities were very concerned that we were going to start taking the funding away from them. So they made it clear that they wanted to be involved in the discussion. And then we scheduled it, and then we rescheduled it, and then we rescheduled it, and reached out several times to invite them to participate, and they actively avoided even responding. So at that point, I mean, if you guys are on this board or on this committee, it's a matter of just directing staff to add it to the agenda, and it can be discussed or handled. We're past that point of adding it, but if you guys want to, push for it. I would recommend it because it's something that we need to review, because we let it go, but, you know.
So I've already made a note here. So
Okay.
Donovan and I will, I had made a note, staff review impact fees, bring back in July. So, and that'll kind of light a fire under both of us to make sure we've got all the empty parcels counted up. So we can, again, calculate what would be a good point that impact fees should definitely start coming back in. And keep in mind, when we, in the past, when we did have our fees as low as $4,400, we were taking the impact fees, which means the city was actually eating a lot of all the work that was being done. And even then, we were only getting one home on average a year. doing what we did has now spurred that development to where we're up in that 50s to 60s. That's good. And again, as I mentioned before, having an empty lot is going to get you virtually nothing in property taxes. Having a lot with a building on it is going to get you a lot more. So this has helped us out as far as bringing tax revenues in for all taxing entities.
It's like a loss leader at the grocery store. They give away a free loaf of bread, you buy a turkey. You
Well,
know?
it makes sense because you can actually start getting revenue and stuff from this property instead
yeah.
of it just sitting there and growing daisies, which looks pretty, but it doesn't really.
Same discussion you need to have at anyone that complains about Starbucks being built. It's not, I don't care. I might never buy, I mean, I'd like Starbucks, so I would buy something there, but the point is, I don't care what's going in there. It was an empty lot. The tax rate on it was extremely low. We're putting a $750,000 building on it that's going to be paying taxes that doesn't affect the school, there's no impact on the school district at all. They're going to get free money, not free money, but they're, you know what I'm saying, they're going to get more tax money.
Get more revenue.
They're going to get more revenue. And no one should be upset with that. That's a wonderful thing for those businesses to come in. Yeah, I want an Aldi's too, but it's not going to happen. So, you know,
Not yet.
well, not yet, 5 years from now or whatever.
It could.
Whatever.
I wouldn't mind an Aldi.
Why is that? Why can't you get it all?
We do not have enough population to attract an Aldi's.
It's not cost efficient for them to build one here. That's what they've told us.
Foot traffic.
Yeah, right.
They do any private business. We can't force anybody to come. We can advertise and incentivize and do things to attract them. But ultimately, it's up to that business to say, we've done the bean counters have counted, and they see that it's profitable, and then they choose to put a business in. But
We have a few stores downtown like La Rosita and then Carniceria and what is the other place?
Fruteria,
Okay, thank you. But yeah,
and Don
there's
Chepe.
there's a lot of places.
Yeah.
They're little
Several small
markets.
ones.
They're smaller groceries.
Yes.
So just to, again, to summarize,
Yeah.
the better we do our job as far as developing and growing the city, the better everybody ends up becoming.
and the more homes that we build, the more likely we get an Aldi. At least we get an increment closer to being able to hopefully entice them.
So I'm going to quote the mayor here. What's your pleasure?
I'm okay with passing this the way that it is for the 7,000. I'll make a motion. You want a
I'll
second?
second your
Okay.
motion. Sorry, I just a little.
Just to be clear, you're recommending to city council.
Recommending to city council, passing this through as a recommendation to city council to approve the agreement, the building permit agreement as presented.
Because there's fees involved, it's a roll call.
That's fine. Jay?
Yes.
Myself? Yes.
Yes.
Rosa? Okay. All unanimous? Passes. Okay. All right. Discussion action or action on the final redevelopment agreement with Elite Health Partners.
So, in short here, we've talked about this in the past. This is the company that's coming in from Colorado. They do manufacturing, they do assignment manufacturing. What we have done is gone back to the existing TIF that's out there in the industrial park, and there's available funds to be able to take $35,000 out of our available funds from the TIF and apply it as an incentive for this company to do the improvements in the building so that they can get up and running faster. 35.
It was 25 originally.
It was 25.
Yeah, the last
All
time we,
So, surprise. I guess we're asking for 35.
okay. But as long as it's coming out of the TIF,
Yeah.
It is, so this,
Yeah.
It's budgeted though.
well, and
We'll
I
have to make,
recommend that
we'll have to make a,
budget amendment.
Yeah.
No, we won't have to do a budget amendment, I just need to know before next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not something we discussed at the workshop, so we're going to get approval.
so the clarity is we're asking for 35, which is a $10,000 increase from what was originally kicked around.
Okay. Well, I'm on admin as well, so I can You got at least one vote. If we approve it here, you got one more vote for admin to get it through.
That changed.
As,
Approve this.
I mean, just for the little bit of discussion, I mean, Jay and I have been, again, Jay speaks for himself, but we both stated during the budget workshop that when we were talking about the 25, that I was in favor, Jay was in favor for the same reason, this is basically what the TIF money was meant to do. So it's not like we're doing anything abnormal. This is why you do a TIF, so that you can then have that fund to use as an incentive to entice businesses or make it easier for them to move in, or, get up and running so they can get their CO faster or something like that. So obviously as a town, it's in our interest to use this money for the reason it's designed, but also because the sooner this business can open, the sooner it's running, the sooner it's employing people, and being a productive member of the business community. So I am in favor of approving this to go to city council. Or does this have to go to city council?
Rosa, yeah, it
It
does.
still has to go to city council because it's an agreement.
Rosa, do you have anything on this?
I think I remember us briefly talking about this in December, and I think I remember us talking about a TIF for Starbucks, so it seems to make sense in general that, enticing different businesses to come here so that way we can grow our community and.
Well, this isn't, because we've talked about TIFs as far as like, if we're gonna create a new one or something like that, but we've also all discussed the past misadventures with TIFs that the city has had, and they haven't all worked out to our net positive. But being more surgical with them in certain areas, we can use them wisely, and this is again for you guys more just furthering on with this board, is they can be like this one has been very successful because it was used in the right area and applied right. And if it's in the right area, or like if we're developing an area on 14, we've talked about, and some other areas are down by where the Sullivans used to be. If you use it in a surgical place, it can be very successful, create those funds, and then you can use them to incentivize like this. So this is existing TIF, but I'm good with it.
So I want to help our listeners out there. This is money that because of the TIF, we were able to get all that development out there in the industrial park. The TIF is set to expire in 27, July-ish in 27. So this money, this TIF, this particular one, as Dan has already mentioned, has actually been quite prosperous. So this money that's being reallocated, or taken out of that TIF fund, is money that is as a result of the TIF. This is not additional tax dollars. This is not general fund dollars. This is money that is right now sitting in a bank account because of the TIF and how successful it's been. And as Dan also pointed out, again, it's just to clarify out there, the whole point of a TIF is to draw those businesses and even do minor improvements, all qualified under the TIF as stated out in this agreement, this draft agreement. So I'll just stop.
All right, so just to clarify for how we would do this between committees. So we approved to move this on to city council. The admin committee would then be requested to allow this to proceed to city council. They would have to do a separate recommendation to change
Budget amendment.
the
They
budget.
don't approve, it's not an amendment because the budget hasn't been approved yet.
Okay,
At the budget workshop, again, we only allocated 25,000. Since then, that has changed.
so admin committee would.
And so admin committee would need to be aware of that change and approve that change,
Okay, so just so that I know.
not the agreement,
No, that's fine.
just the change.
Yeah.
If both of
but-
those things fall in line, you approve the agreement, they approve the change, it goes to city council for final approval. That agreement is one thing, the final budget is the other thing.
Okay, so so assuming both of them are approved as recommendations to the city council, this will show up on, just so everybody knows what's coming. Both of these would show up on the agenda for city council, and for this to go through, both of them would have to be approved.
So then do we make a motion to approve the agreement and then another one to send the budget.
No.
Sorry,
We,
the verbiage.
I
Yeah,
jumped in. I
we would-
apologize.
we would make you can make a motion to approve this as a recommendation, as is, to city council. Then we're done as a committee with this part. The admin committee would then have it on their agenda to update the budget from the 25,000 to the 35,000 to agree to line up with this. And then that would be a separate recommendation to city council from them. So when we all convene from city council, you'll see one from us and one from admin. And as long as we, as a council, approve both, it goes through.
So we don't have to specifically say we need to send this.
No, we're just, if
Okay.
we're all, if we're all approved, then this just, as we're looking at it, goes right to city council and we relook at it in a couple of weeks.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it
Sorry,
will be
I just wanted to make
contingent.
sure I could understand exact verbiage here.
Yep, but it'll also be contingent on the separate piece that the admin committee would need to do.
So could I make, well, what do you think, Rosa?
I think that we should do that. I mean, I think it's a good idea. And it's the TIF money, that's what it's for, so I agree.
Well, then I will, if anybody has any more discussion or nothing, I will accept a motion and a second from anybody to,
I'd like to make a motion to send this to city council for consideration.
okay,
I second it.
okay, motion and a second. All those, do we have to have a roll call?
It's dollar amounts.
Okay.
So, all right.
All right, so we'll start on this corner.
Yes?
Rosa?
Yes.
Yes.
And myself, yes. So, all ayes, motion carries.
Perfect.
Gonna go to city council.
Got to make sure we do everything
Nope.
correct.
Done right.
No, it's fine. But I also want to make sure that, like, just from, that since you guys are gonna be learning, the procedural part of it, you know what to expect, so it makes sense to you when we're looking at it and you know what's coming, so. Because in
It's
a couple months, we won't be here no more. All right. Next item is number 9, request for, this should be an easy one, request for honorary street names for the following. Lori Moller for City Hall entrance, and Mark, is it Haig?
Haig,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I pronounce it correctly. Mark Haig for the Public Works building entrance.
So this is something that was brought up last year when we received a request to do an honorary street naming. We have since come up, our staff has come up with a policy. The policy itself, because this is more on the admin side, will actually go in front of the admin. But because your committee comes first, before the admin, we're making this request. Lori Moller has been the city clerk for about 8+ years. The city clerk. So Lori's
Everything.
been,
Everything.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
Yes, she's.
so Lori's been the city clerk for several years, but she's also been employed with the city for 36 years before she retired. On the full-time employment, but she's still the current city clerk. Her name's right there. Until May 1st of this year, when she goes into full-time retirement on that side. Again, she's been here for 36 years, which makes her about the second longest, or tied for the second longest employee, or tenure of an employee. And then Mark has been here for 41 years and just recently went into retirement. Even though we have this discussion talks a little bit about a street naming, these requests would be more on the borderline, kind of in that gray area, in that we're trying to name entrances to city buildings. It would be honorary Mark Haig Way and honorary Lori Moller Way.
I make a motion, the request honorary street names for the following: Lori Moller, City Hall entrance, the Lori Moller Way; Mark Haig, Public Work Building entrance, Mark Haig Way.
Second.
I will say that I appreciate that this is a new thing with the city, because this is, I mean, up to this point, I think the only things in the city that have had acknowledgements were like bench donations and things like that, that we've had permanent fixtures. And it was Rosa's request that kind of spurred this, and I think that this is something that, I mean, obviously I don't want this to turn into like the city of Chicago, where every alleyway is an honorary something. But I think that this is a really great way to honor the people in the town that have committed a significant portion of their lives to the betterment of the community. And I can't think of two people that are more deserving of this. So I emphatically thank you guys for pushing for this. And I think that I'd like to see, you know, a little more of this too in the future to recognize people.
So the one thing I want to point out is the street name designation is capped at 3 years. Once going forward, once this is approved by the full council, or if it gets approved by the full council, what happens is that the honorary way or boulevard, whatever the naming, would actually be for a 3-year period. This would actually be a recommendation before this policy goes into place, which means anything before this goes in would be permanent or potentially permanent.
I would
So like,
I would prefer
yeah.
these to be permanent, just because of the significance of them as well, and since we're talking entrances more than a city
And
street.
that's why there's a little strategery too as to why these recommendations are coming in the way they are.
Well, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. It's approved. And just to kind of tail end on that, I know that I made a suggestion some time ago for another possibility to be added to this, but I'm not sure if they were interested or whatever, but we can discuss that at another time. Moving on to strategic vision. Do we have anything to update for that? I know we've got the,
I don't think anything from staff, unless any of the committee members have anything. Of course, we have the
cow.
later this month, so.
Jay insisted on calling it the cow. It's the cow. We've got the cow coming up, so I don't think we've got anything really to add other than we're just going to review everything at the cow. All right. New business.
So I do have just one thing I'd like to bring up. There is a grant that's going on out there. It's a technical assistance grant through R1. And what they're doing is the final result will be that they'll design a master plan for locations that would be ideal for a charging station, an EV charging station. Now, this doesn't mean that that is for sure where it's going. They're not making that. This is just a recommendation list of where this would be, including any future development areas. So that, and this is where it ties into community development. It's being able to, with future plans, kind of incorporate it in like any other master plan. It is free to the city. It is 100% covered by this grant.
And this would be pretty much, and this could be anywhere, like parking spots on Air Street or potentially in Milky Way Park or something like that, just anywhere
Correct.
on city, but it would be city property where this would be considered, not like off of a state.
What happened to the one that we were going to put in the Metro lot? It fall through?
Yeah.
Okay. Understood.
The dollar amounts, to make it effective, it was far larger than what the bill would be. I mean, what the coverage would be. And part of that too is we have an old siren out there that would have to be removed. We were trying to incorporate that as part of the grant so that we didn't have to do anything out of our own pocket, quite frankly.
And double dipping.
And unfortunately, that jacked the price up to where it just didn't make any sense.
Right.
Did you break them all now? So again, this is free. I've gone ahead and sent off a commitment letter that we are in favor of moving forward with this. We will find out. They're looking for 10 to 15 communities within the Rockford area. And we fit ideally one of the locations. And so that's why they reached out to me yesterday. And I went ahead and signed a commitment letter saying, yeah, we would like to explore this further. There's no obligation to actually implement it all.
It would be for one? Did you say one?
No, it's for EV charging stations throughout the city.
Throughout the city? Nice.
It'd be great to have that. It'd be great to.
What'd you do?
Yawn.
Yeah.
I did that earlier, so it's okay.
No, it'd be great to have this information and the price is right. So, I mean, things like this is a no-brainer.
Free is for me.
Eventually, we're going to be, I mean, our plan, even our strategic vision is to expand this type of infrastructure. So, you could have said this for strategic vision.
Well, I could have.
Any other new business?
I don't
Sorry,
have
Dan,
any-
I'm
No,
the
you're fine.
minister.
I don't have anything.
Just a question. I need, with everybody here, there's been, as part of this probably could have been under strategic vision, so I apologize. But I'm putting together the final touches on a mural program.
Okay.
The definitions of what is acceptable, they'd have to be approved before anything gets done.
Everything cow.
You'll have to put
I
that
better
in.
see a lot of cows, man.
So
There's
the-
murals, I'm
the
telling you.
question
Sounds
is,
really moving.
this is where I go back and forth on this one.
Good one.
The option is we could create another committee out of this, which would actually open up the door to other art-style grants. Or we can just keep this low-key for now, and it would be more of a beautification, which it would, I believe, and this is where I need input from all of you, I believe it would actually fall under the community development committee.
Well, I mean, originally, we had talked about, there was going to be that one-off, like, mural event that we were talking about doing, and that was this committee, I mean, that was one of the first things this committee was really kind of talking about when we didn't have much of an agenda. So I think, yeah, I would say going forward, I would say that that's definitely something that we could do.
It has been discussed, and I think there was principal alignment to create an arts and culture committee as a separate advisory committee, but I don't know that we're there yet. So
Yeah. I don't have much to talk
if
about.
that committee isn't created, this makes the most sense to be in this committee.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that if for now, it makes more sense to have it in this committee, going forward, but should that become something where there is quite a bit of funding, a lot of interest, a lot of growing that as a program, then yeah, I think, kind of like we have the tree board, it would make a lot more sense to just split that off on its own thing, so.
Well,
Just more meetings, that's all.
Yeah. Well, and we're gonna have a bunch of new people on the board, so I mean, it would be, you guys are gonna be shuffling those positions up, and those types of committees, I think, are good for junior members to get acclimated to procedure and everything.
So for now, I'll proceed as though it is just a program within this committee, and then the ordinance would be more for the guidelines of what qualifies. And then I will leave the eventual arts committee as just a bullet in the chamber down the road.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Appreciate you bringing that up.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Is she gone?
Don't,